You're watching Shadow Tales. I didn't expect the worst pain of my life to come from a small hand covered in pink birthday frosting. When my daughter looked at me, really looked at me, and called me trash, in front of everyone, something inside my chest folded in on itself. And I remember thinking, she didn't learn that word from me. It was her 10th birthday. Double digits. She had been counting down to it for months, circling the date on the calendar like it was a national holiday. I'd promised her it would be special. Not extravagant. Just special. The party was at my house. The same house I'd fought to keep after the divorce. White balloons were tied along the fence. A rented cotton candy machine hummed softly near the patio. There was a banner that read, "Happy 10th, Lily," in glittery pink letters I'd hung myself, slightly crooked. I noticed it was crooked 3 times. I fixed it twice. The 3rd time, I let it stay. Her mother, Caroline, stood near the dessert table in a cream-colored dress, perfectly composed. She had always been composed. Even when we were breaking apart, she never raised her voice. She simply withdrew warmth like someone turning off a faucet. We'd agreed to be civil for Lily. And for the most part, we were. Caroline's fiancé, Marcus, arrived 20 minutes late. He stepped out of a sleek black car that didn't belong in our quiet neighborhood. The engine purred in a way that made heads turn. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce. Not yet. Just something expensive enough to whisper status without shouting it. Marcus wore a tailored navy suit despite it being a backyard children's party. He smiled like he was posing for a magazine cover. "Daniel," he said, extending his hand. Firm grip. Controlled eye contact. "You've done quite a setup here." There was a pause before, "Quite." I smiled back. "It's her day." "It is," he said, glancing around as if assessing the return on investment. Marcus had money. Old money, Caroline once said, though she tried to sound indifferent about it. He owned properties, sat on boards, understood wine labels without reading the price. I work as a high school literature teacher. I understand metaphors. Lily ran toward Marcus when she saw him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, nearly knocking frosting onto his jacket. He laughed and lifted her easily. "Did you see the gift I sent earlier?" he asked her. Her eyes lit up. "The iPad. Mom said it's the newest one. I wouldn't give you anything less," he replied. I felt something shift in the air then. Subtle. Like a window opening somewhere behind me. I'd spent weeks putting aside small amounts to buy Lily a necklace. Nothing flashy. A small silver pendant with her birthstone. She used to love stones. Used to collect them from the park and ask me what they meant. I told her garnet symbolized protection and love. She believed me. The party moved forward. Kids ran. Parents chatted. Caroline laughed at something Marcus whispered to her. I stood near the grill longer than necessary, even after the food was done. At one point, Marcus joined me. "You okay?" he asked. "Of course," I said. He nodded slowly. "It's important for Lily to see stability. Consistency. You know." I looked at him. "Are you saying I'm inconsistent?" "No," he smiled gently. "I'm saying children notice things." The words weren't aggressive. They were surgical. I watched him walk back to Caroline. He placed a hand lightly on her back. She leaned into it. I remembered when she used to lean into me like that. Lily opened presents an hour later. The kids gathered in a half circle, shrieking at every layer of wrapping paper. She tore through boxes with wild excitement. When she opened my gift, she paused. It wasn't a dramatic pause. It was small, but I saw it. She lifted the necklace, holding it between 2 fingers. "Oh," she said. "You said you liked garnet," I reminded her softly. She looked toward her mother. Caroline's smile was polite, encouraging. Marcus tilted his head slightly, observing. "It's nice," Lily said. "Nice." She said it beside her. Then Marcus brought out another box. This one was large, glossy, branded, the kind of packaging that announces itself before being opened. Gasps rippled through the kids when she lifted the lid. Inside was a designer handbag, small, but unmistakable. Caroline inhaled sharply. "Marcus. For my favorite 10-year-old, he said. Lily squealed. She jumped up and hugged him again. And then she looked at me. I don't know what she saw on my face. Maybe the effort. Maybe the comparison. Maybe the gap. "You could have at least tried harder," she said. The words landed softly at first. "What?" I asked gently. She stood up. In front of her friends. In front of Caroline. In front of Marcus. You always give cheap stuff. Mom says you never think big. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but embarrassment. It's my birthday, Dad. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I did think about it, I said quietly. I chose it because you're cheap. She burst out. And then, with a sudden flush of frustration and something else, something borrowed, she slapped me. It wasn't hard, but it echoed. The yard went silent. Even the cotton candy machine seemed to pause. And then she said it. You're trash. The word didn't sound natural in her mouth. It sounded practiced. Caroline stepped forward immediately. Lily. That's enough. But her voice carried more shock than discipline. Marcus didn't move. He simply watched me. I swallowed. My face stung less than my chest. I think she's overwhelmed, Marcus offered smoothly. Big emotions. Big day. I knelt down slowly so I was eye level with my daughter. Lily, I said softly, look at me. She didn't. Her fingers tightened around the designer bag. 20 minutes later, just as the party began to recover its awkward rhythm, a deep engine roar rolled down the street. Not purring, roaring. Heads turned toward the curb. And then it appeared. A pristine, gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom. It didn't belong here. It didn't belong anywhere near my modest house or my crooked birthday banner. The driver stepped out first. Then the rear door opened slowly. Marcus's confident expression flickered, just for a second. Caroline's hand slipped from his arm. Lily looked up, wide-eyed. And as the figure inside began to emerge, I realized something I hadn't understood all afternoon. This wasn't about a necklace. It wasn't about money. And it certainly wasn't about a 10-year-old's temper. Someone had been preparing this moment. And I had just stepped directly into it. The door of the closed with a soft, deliberate click. The kind of sound that doesn't need to be loud to command attention. Every conversation in my backyard dissolved into silence. Even the children felt it, some instinct that something important was unfolding. The man who stepped out wasn't young. Mid-60s, perhaps. Silver hair combed back neatly. Dark overcoat despite the warm afternoon. He didn't rush. He didn't look impressed. He simply looked certain. Marcus moved first. Mr. Whitmore, he said, straightening his jacket. His voice carried a new note, one I hadn't heard before. Respect. Almost deference. So that was it. This wasn't random. The older man's eyes swept the yard and stopped on me. Daniel Harper? He asked. My throat felt dry. Yes. He studied me for a moment that stretched longer than comfort allowed. Then he nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, he said calmly. But timing matters. Caroline looked confused. Marcus, what is this? Marcus forced a small smile. Mr. Whitmore is an associate. Associate. The word felt thin. Whitmore turned toward Lily, who was still clutching the designer handbag. And this must be your daughter. Lily nodded, suddenly shy. Happy birthday, he said kindly. 10 is a significant year. His tone wasn't indulgent. It was measured, observant. Then he looked back at me. I had hoped to speak with you privately, he said. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, neighbors, parents, children who didn't fully understand but sensed the tension. This is my daughter's party, I replied carefully. And that, Whitmore said, is precisely why I came today. Marcus stepped in slightly. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps this isn't the appropriate setting. Whitmore didn't even glance at him. On the contrary, he said softly. It is the perfect setting. A memory flickered in my mind, 2 weeks earlier. A letter. Thick paper. No return address. An invitation to discuss a legacy matter connected to my late grandfather. I hadn't responded. My grandfather, Arthur Harper, had been a quiet man. Lived modestly. Worked as a mechanic. Died with little ceremony and, as far as I knew, little savings. The letter had felt like a scam. I'd thrown it in a drawer. Whitmore reached into his coat and pulled out a familiar envelope. You received my correspondence, he said. A murmur rippled through the adults nearby. I did, I admitted. And you chose not to reply. I thought it wasn't real. Whitmore's lips curved faintly. Understandable. Marcus's posture had changed. The confidence from earlier was thinning. Daniel, Caroline said softly, what is he talking about? Whitmore answered for me. Your former father-in-law, Arthur Harper, was not simply a mechanic, he said. He was an early investor. In what? I asked, my pulse beginning to thud. Whitmore's gaze flicked briefly toward Marcus before returning to me. In several ventures that matured quite significantly over the last decade. The air felt heavier. I manage a private trust, Whitmore continued. Established under your grandfather's instruction. It remained dormant until a specific condition was met. What condition? I whispered. He looked at Lily. When his direct air demonstrated integrity over status. The words didn't land immediately. What does that mean? Caroline asked. Whitmore folded his hands behind his back. For the past year, Mr. Harper, you have been quietly observed. A chill crept along my spine. Observed, I repeated. Your financial decisions. Your employment stability. Your commitment to your daughter despite limited means. His voice remained steady. You declined multiple opportunities to pursue higher paying corporate positions in order to maintain consistent hours as a teacher. I stared at him. How would you know that? It was my responsibility to know. Marcus finally stepped forward. This is inappropriate. You can't just surveil people. Whitmore's eyes shifted to him for the first time. Mr. Marcus Hale, he said evenly. Your name appears frequently in recent months. The yard was so quiet I could hear the faint rustle of the banner I'd hung earlier. Whitmore continued, your relationship with Ms. Caroline Bennett progressed shortly after you became aware of the Harper Trust. Caroline's face drained of color. Marcus laughed lightly. This is absurd. Whitmore didn't react. The trust's activation required confirmation that Daniel Harper remained grounded, uncorrupted by sudden wealth or influence, he said. Unfortunately, external parties attempted to accelerate matters. My mind raced. The expensive gifts. The subtle comments. The way Lily's vocabulary had shifted. Whitmore looked at Lily again, not unkindly. Children repeat what they hear, he said softly. Caroline's eyes filled. She turned slowly toward Marcus. Did you know about this? About some trust. Marcus's jaw tightened. It's not what it sounds like. Whitmore spoke calmly over him. The Harper Trust currently holds assets valued at approximately $32 million. The number didn't feel real. It hovered in the air like fiction. Gasps broke out among the adults. Lily's eyes widened, not fully understanding, but sensing magnitude. And today, Whitmore said, I was prepared to formally present stewardship documents to Daniel Harper. Silence. But, he added carefully, there is a final clause. My stomach dropped. What clause? I asked. Whitmore's expression shifted, just slightly. The trust transfers only if the heir's primary motivation remains relational, not reactive. I don't understand. He gestured subtly toward the scene around us. The party. The slap. The word. Moments of humiliation test character, he said. How one responds reveals intention. My face burned again as I remembered Lily's hand against my cheek. I would never trade my daughter for money, I said firmly. Whitmore studied me. Then you understand why I had to witness today. Caroline stepped back from Marcus as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You told me Daniel was unstable, she whispered. That he couldn't provide long-term security. Marcus's composure cracked. I said he deserved help. That's all. Whitmore's voice remained level. You advised Ms. Bennett that Daniel's financial limitations reflected lack of ambition. Marcus didn't deny it. I looked at my daughter. She was staring at the Rolls-Royce, then at me, confusion clouding her excitement. Dad, she said quietly. I walked toward her slowly and knelt again. Lily, I said gently, do you remember when we used to collect stones at the park? She nodded faintly. You asked me what they meant. Her grip on the handbag loosened. Garnet, I continued softly, means protection and love. Not price. Her lower lip trembled. Whitmore cleared his throat slightly. As I said, he reminded us, there is a final clause. I stood, my heart pounding. What is it? Whitmore met my eyes directly. You must decide, he said, before sunset, whether you wish to accept stewardship of the trust under its original terms. And if I don't? I asked. Then it is redirected to its secondary beneficiary. The word hit me like cold water. Secondary. Caroline whispered. Whitmore turned his gaze slowly, deliberately, toward Marcus. And for the first time that afternoon, Marcus didn't smile. The sun dipped slightly lower behind the houses, casting long shadows across my crooked banner. I looked at my daughter. At Caroline. At the man who had been so confident just an hour ago. And I realized the real test wasn't about money. It was about what I was willing to lose to prove who I truly was. Whitmore checked his watch. "You have 3 hours," he said calmly. And then he stepped back toward the waiting Rolls-Royce.